Good Thursday afternoon to you. It's 4 o'clock. Time for Sports4CLE. It is 2022 draft day in the NFL. Round one taking place. It gets underway in about 4 hours or so out in Las Vegas. We will talk plenty about the draft, what the Browns might do, and what is going on in terms of the draft throughout the NFL. The big question is, why should you trust Andrew Berry? Well, let's take a look at his first two drafts. And one of the ways to do this is look at the redrafts and how they have gone. 2021 redraft, remember, pick was Greg Newsome. So Greg Newsome goes 16 overall in this redraft. The Browns were drafted at 26. The Arizona Cardinals take him 16th overall, meaning Newsome the 16th best player on the board. You look at 19, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, taken by the Washington Commanders. Remember, Owusu-Koramoah was the Browns' second-round pick. So both of Andrew Berry's first two picks gone in this redraft before the Browns would have drafted at 26. The Browns get Odafe Oweh, who went to the Ravens at 26, edge rusher, had a real good rookie season as well. Let's go back to Andrew Berry's first draft in charge, the 2020 draft. First round pick that year was Jedrick Wills. Well, he got drafted earlier too. He gets taken 7th overall by the Carolina Panthers, which means the Browns would be stuck drafting C.D. Lamb. That's a pretty good guy to get stuck with at 10 for the Browns. Let's welcome in Quincy Carrier. Quincy, the reason for looking at that redrafts is just to show how successful the early parts of the draft have been for the Browns under Andrew Berry. Some of the mid-round ones you can quibble with. He's had success late. All in all, he's done a really good job with his first two drafts.
Yeah, I mean, I think sometimes we get caught up when we talk about the draft and everybody has this weird expectation that nobody has ever hit, that every draft pick got to hit in order for it to be a good draft, or even the majority. Fact is, if you get one or two good players, if you get one all-pro player in a draft, you probably did as good as you could do, right? It's hit or miss, swing or miss. The fact that they got JOK and Greg Newsome in the same draft class without really having to move that much to get both of those guys, one was in the second round, the other one was in the first round, that's a tremendous job by Andrew Berry. Now, I will say this. I could have told you, dude in the chair, JOK should have been in the top 20 of the draft last year. People just didn't take him for whatever reason, right? Yep. So how much credit he gets for being a guy that finally was smart enough to be hey, let's take this really good player here in the second round, I don't know. So we'll find out. This is going to be a good year to see where his true draft acumen is, because there's not an obvious answer right there in front of him at 44, like there has been with Jedrick Wills was the obvious answer. But Greg Newsome was an obvious answer for him, and then JOK was too. So he might not be gift wrapped that obvious of a win, but it's nice to know in a league that has a lot of GMs who won't just take the win when it's in front of them, that we have a GM who at the very least will understand, hey, I got to take this right here.
And the other thing about Jedrick Wills, remember he was injured with an ankle injury. And if you want to know how an ankle injury affects a lineman, try picking up a 25-pound weight with both hands and then do it standing on one leg, because that's basically what he was doing. And then do it with 50 pounds. Now imagine 300 pounds trying to move around you. So give Jedrick Wills a little bit of a pass for last year, because he was injured early. He tried to play through it, and it just didn't work.
Yeah, he was injured, and he had to miss a few games. And I felt like when he came back that second time around, he really wasn't bad. I think a lot of people just kind of jumped on him about how bad he was. It really wasn't him that was bad. I mean, I think there was more to say about the right side of the offensive line at certain points of the year, especially before James got really comfortable on that right side there. But also I think there's a lot to say about, other factors. I'm not going to name anybody specifically, but other factors that could contribute to why the pocket collapsed or why there were so many sacks taken too. So I think Jedrick kind of gets a little bit of an unfair shake there. One, because his tape really wasn't as bad as people say it was. And he was also playing through injury. And again, if you go out there, same expectation for every player, right? If you go out there, I expect you to be able to play at a serviceable level. I felt like he did that at the end of the year once he came back. There were a couple games before he sat out for that injury where it was looking like he couldn't play football at all. He took those games off, and then he came back. He was pretty serviceable after that.
All right, so first round of the draft coming up tonight. Second round tomorrow when the Browns pick. We're going to do a mock draft here. We're going to do it live. So we're going to use the Pro Football Focus mock draft simulator. I asked Quincy earlier if he wanted to trade up. He did not. So we're picking at 44. So let us start the draft and see what awaits as it's going real time through the first round, and it'll clip through them pretty well. It takes into account positional needs and the like for each of the teams. It stops at 44, and let's take a look at the wide receivers, the edge rushers, and also the interior defensive linemen that would be available, the three areas of need. All right, so Quincy, I am deferring to you as the general manager. The highest rated people on this board are Nick Benito, Drake Jackson, Josh Pat. There's a lot of edge rushers that are pretty good on that. Mechie's in there. Who are you going with at 44 with everybody that is available to us there?
I'm going to switch it up and go with somebody I have not gone with in any of my mock drafts so far. We're going to go back to the top. We're going to take Drake Jackson, edge rusher, USC.
All right, so we're going to draft, we'll draft him, and we'll go onward and get to 78, a young edge rusher that, projects to be pretty good. So this is our Sports4CLE 1.0 mock draft, the only one we will do. All right, let's again put up the guys that are from the positions wide receiver, the edge, and also interior defensive lineman. And again, you see the names that are available. Robinson, Canton McKinley guy who played quarterback in high school of all things, last couple of years has switched out and now playing edge rusher and has had some productivity and projects to get drafted reasonably early. All right, who you like? You see the guys that are available there. Where are you going with our first pick in the third round, so 78?
See, look, there's a lot of PFF be lying on you. They be saying Perion Winfrey ranked 84th overall. He don't never be there at 78.
Nope.
Any of these mock drafts.
He does
right?
not. He goes early in that, late in the second round usually.
Yeah, they know they tripping on that ranking. That's a terrible ranking for them. They're gonna look back on that one and regret that. Let's see who is at the top of the board right now.
Robinson.
Robinson.
Yeah, who's kind of a projection as an edge rusher.
All right, I'm going to go and do a value pick here. We're going to take Brian Cook, safety out of Cincinnati.
All right, so go ahead and draft Brian Cook, safety. What do you like about Cook? Not a guy I'm real familiar with.
Brian Cook, he's just kind of he would be an insurance piece, right? Hey, if John Johnson gets too expensive in a couple of years, you have a replacement for him. He's a guy who could do similar things to him, played in a zone-heavy system at the University of Cincinnati where they go in a lot of 4-2-5. It's why Alabama was able to run all day on them, but they sit in that 4-2-5 all the time. That's what the Browns want to do, and he would be a good fit for them at that spot.
All right, here's 99, and again, you look at who is available. Is there any position group you want us to focus on, give you a better look at who's available on the board here?
Yeah, give me wide receivers.
All right.
And tight ends.
Wide receiver. There you see the wide receivers, and so you got Rucker, you got Bell, Phillips. Always seems to be there in these PFF mock drafts.
What's my next pick after 99 is what?
118, which we're only going to do this. We'll stop after the third round here. So
after 118, we'll stop.
Yeah, I think we're stopping after 99. We're not even going to go to 118.
Okay. Let's take Justin Ross here, wide receiver out of Clemson.
Okay.
140 right there.
Justin Ross, a young guy who over at Clemson a couple years earlier in his career, he was profiling like he was going to be even a higher draft pick.
Fits all the Andrew Berry guardrails, right? Young, athletic player, had a season of production when he did have a quarterback there at Clemson. After Trevor Lawrence left, it kind of got a little shaky for him, but somebody who I could see the upside being tremendous on. He kind of reminds me of Tyler Boyd coming out of Pitt, right, where everybody was down on him about a couple of years before he was a Heisman candidate, right? Drake Jackson, Brian Cook, again, solid picks there. Not necessarily, like, again, you guys know me, right. 44, I'm taking Perrion Winfrey. But I think also this is a realistic result for the Cleveland Browns. They could go edge defender there, and Drake Jackson would probably be their guy at 44.
Yep, and again, the Ross one is you're projecting what you think could happen with him, and you see the reason for the grade on that is we're taking him at 99. He's ranked at 140. Again, they listed it as a B draft. All right, let me ask you this, and I know you talked about this on your show. Who do you think is the steal that Andrew Berry comes up with in the second round for the Browns this year?
Now, if there is a guy who could be a steal, I don't know if it happens in the second round this year, right? The guy would be either Treylon Burks at 44 or George Pickens at like 99. If you get George Pickens at 99, it's just as much as a steal as getting Treylon Burks at 44. But one of those two players are going to have a fall. I think George Pickens, you can already see the breadcrumbs lying in the waste for the fall that's coming up with him. People are talking about he didn't interview well and how people don't want to draft him, even though he's a tremendous athlete, tremendous wide receiver. And then Treylon Burks, for whatever reason, people are just talking themselves out of him. That's also a recipe for a guy to fall into the second round. Now, it's going to be hard to get a guy who falls all the way to 44, but hey, JOK went at 50 last year, right? So anything is really possible when it comes down to it. But yeah, I think those are the two players to keep your eyeballs on. One of these wide receivers that we have talked about is going to fall just because there are so many wide receivers in this draft class that somebody's going to get kind of pushed down because the run won't be able to take everybody.
Quincy Carrier and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason, a question about Kevin Stefanski in this year. Sports4CLE, be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
When it comes to selling you a mattress, most retailers are handing you a long line of extra steps that drive up costs and create confusion. At the Original Mattress Factory, we simplify the mattress shopping experience by building mattresses and box springs in our own local factories and selling them direct to you. It's short, sweet, and simply makes sense. So experience more than just the mattress store. Experience an original, the Original Mattress Factory.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine. Round one of the NFL Draft a few hours away. We continue talking Browns with Quincy Carrier. Let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. This one about Kevin Stefanski and what this year might be like.
Hey guys, this is Marcus calling from Akron. First off, I love the show, especially you got my boy Quincy on there and the lovely Mary Kay Cabot. They make you feel like you got your own personal insight of everything Browns when they're on the show. But my question is, with the upcoming season coming up and everything looming over Deshaun Watson, if he is not suspended this year and gets to play all 17 games and it doesn't work out the way that everybody hopes that it's supposed to work out this year, does Kevin Stefanski end up on the hot seat at the end of the year? Thanks, guys. Great show, man. Love it. Go Browns.
All right, Marcus, as always, we appreciate all of our voicemails. I'll let you take that one, Quincy. Browns, Watson plays. Browns don't have a successful year. What do you think?
Yeah, if the offense is a disaster, right, then you have to start. And it might not be because Stefanski deserves to be fired or anything like that. But, hey, at some point, you've committed all this money to Watson. You committed all this money to all these pieces on the offense. The only piece that can really go is him. So you got to move him just to see if something can change, right? If this offense becomes a disaster, I don't expect it to, right? But yeah, I mean, this could happen with any coach. If the offense is a disaster, there's no reason for it to be a disaster after multiple years. Something's going to have to change, whether that be an offensive coordinator change or it might be a change in the head coach. I don't know if it would get that drastic, right? I think the offensive coordinator goes before Kevin goes, right? If in that kind of scenario, but it could be possible.
Yeah.
Thanks for the shout out, Marcus.
And the other thing is, Quincy, they could say, yeah, we need the offensive coordinator to call the plays. Those would be the steps that I think would occur before Kevin Stefanski would be really in any danger.
Or you would need to get an offensive coordinator who has called plays. The problem with Van Pelt calling plays, he ain't done it before. So you would just be swapping out an inexperienced play caller who has some experience because he's been the head coach for the last couple of years with a more inexperienced play caller, right? So if that's the issue, that's not going to work, right? If you can bring in somebody who is going to be in control of the offense, you say Kevin could be the CEO, that's usually the thing, but it would be I don't see a world where the offense stinks and then Scott Van Pelt gets more responsibility. It would be a different offensive coordinator who has called plays before and maybe even has their own offense, but it would be a swift change there, I think, before they would go and move off of Kevin.
Again, I know you've addressed this on your show. How do you see if the Browns were able to re-sign Jarvis Landry, or if they know they can re-sign him, how does that change what they might do in the draft, or doesn't it?
It would change some things, right? I think towards more of the fringes, like at 99 and the fourth round and so on, they might not take a wide receiver for depth there if they have Jarvis Landry, because that ends up being a player who could not make the team. But I don't think it changes what they do at 44 or 99 as much, because if a insanely high value proposition player pops up there at 44, at 78, then I think you still take them, right? If Treylon Burks is there and you re-sign Jarvis Landry, then you just have Treylon Burks and Jarvis Landry. You're not going to not take Treylon because you have Jarvis. But like if you get to 118 and Justin Ross is sitting there and you like Justin Ross, you might not take him because you have Jarvis Landry. Like it's at a certain value proposition, I think it would change drastically if you would take a wide receiver. I just don't think it matters as much with certain prospects at 44 and 78.
Yeah, that makes a whole lot of sense. All right, so this is according to NFL.com. 2022 NFL Draft Sleepers, Day 3 Hidden Gems. They list a wide receiver from Boise State, Khalil Shakur, on it. You see Daniel Jeremiah's big board ranking 102. You see his athleticism, the score. Starter probability, pretty high. Pro Bowl probability, if you're talking Day 3, that's pretty darn high too, if you're saying 12% Pro Bowl probability. What do you think of Shakur, and is that somebody you think that fits in with what the Browns might be looking at wide receiver?
He doesn't match up with some of the Browns' guardrails there for what they look for in a skill player, especially the age. 22 is a little bit old for Andrew Berry. He usually likes to go sub 21 almost on draft day at least. So that's a little bit of a concern there. Also, you have to keep in mind, right, bringing in a 22-year-old with the 44 or 78 pick, it's kind of like odd when you already have a 21-year-old Anthony Schwartz on the roster. So that's this kind of sort of thing that can affect that. I like Khalil Shakur. I don't know if he necessarily fits with the Browns and matches up where they would be picking at anyways. But again, this wide receiver class is deep. We could be talking about Khalil Shakur being a first-round pick. Like, it's like, remember a couple of, like, what was the Nick Chubb year, right? Where all of these running backs were available. Everybody's talking about this is one of the greatest running back classes. Sony Michel, Saquon Barkley, Nick Chubb, all these dudes were in that class. And like, it was random which running backs went where, because when there are this many players that are this good at a certain position, everybody got a flavor of ice cream that they like the most that they could put at the top. And so that's what's going to happen here, right? You're going to see a dude that nobody thought would be in the first round that's going to go. And you're probably going to see two of those guys this year because, again, there's so many flavors of ice cream that anybody could be your favorite in this year's draft class at wide receiver.
All right, let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason before we take a quick timeout. This one about a trade idea.
I want you need to voice this right away or get this to Kevin Stefanski or the Browns front office. Listen, tell them to offer their second-round pick and another round pick for Deebo Samuels because he like Tariq Hill on the wide receiver side, and then he can run from behind the line like Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt, all-around versatile. He's a Pro Bowler, young, and it'd be just like getting hitting the first pick in the draft. So he's worth that second-round pick and a couple other picks, or throw Baker Mayfield in with it. However, they should go all out to get Deebo Samuels. To put him on the other side of Amari Cooper, we guarantee to get to the Super Bowl this year. That's the move. So holler at the front office and tell them to make a serious move at Deebo Samuels. All right, take it easy.
All right, as always, appreciate all the voicemails. Quincy, I think if a second-round pick would get it done, they'd do it in a heartbeat. I think San Francisco is going to want at least one first-round pick. The other thing is Deebo doesn't want to run the ball anymore, which is fine. He's a good wide receiver, but that's why he wants out of San Francisco. He wants a clearly defined role. He doesn't want to be the guy that runs running back and plays wide receiver and does all that.
And the issue with trading for Deebo Samuel this year is that this is a draft class where you feel like you can find a good wide receiver, not necessarily somebody who's as good and as versatile as Deebo Samuel, but somebody who could be good for your team, right? Especially in a specific role. So would the upgrade from, let's say, you're able to get the fourth best wide receiver in this draft class, how much of an upgrade is that from Deebo Samuel? Well, how much of an upgrade is Deebo Samuel from that? That's really the question there. That's what makes the calculus hard. And when you're talking about giving up a first-round pick, some people are talking about 2 first-round picks and like a third for Deebo Samuel. It just doesn't make that much sense there. One, because he's a player you can have some question marks about, hey, was he just good because Kyle Shanahan had him? And let's be honest about this. Kyle Shanahan has made some players look like gold that was not gold at the end of the day, right? I mean, he made Brian Hoyer look like he could start on a playoff team for like 7 games in the NFL. That's as impressive as it gets. Things that he did with Taylor Gabriel, things that he did with Andrew Hawkins, like that was not a great wide receiving core that he had, but he was able to make it happen because Kyle Shanahan is very good at figuring out what you can do. It's kind of like a Bill Belichick of the offense situation where he can figure out what you can do, put you in position to do that, and then that's what you're going to do, right? And that's what he did with Deebo Samuel. So I would have some concerns about, hey, I'm giving up all these assets, like I'm trading for Tyreek Hill for a guy that I have questions about if they can only do this one thing at a high enough level to justify the price. So I think they're going to have a hard time moving Deebo for the price that they want him. And as far as the Cleveland Browns being able to pay their price, we ain't got no picks left. We really don't have any picks left. Like, I don't know where these picks are going to manifest themselves from. People keep throwing Baker Mayfield in there. We can't assume that the San Francisco 49ers see Baker Mayfield and his $18 million a year when they still got Jimmy Garoppolo that they trying to load off on somebody as a positive. That's going to cost you more picks to give up if you throw Baker Mayfield in there. So we really don't got any assets that we're really willing to give up off of. So trading, I think we've done all the trading we could do for the next year and a half.
Yeah, and you know what? They got Deshaun Watson, they got their quarterback, so it was assets well spent. Quincy Carrier.
It's not like we feel like we have to elevate the quarterback anymore, right? Like, this is not a situation to where you feel like you have a dude who you're only going to have on a rookie deal that you feel like you got to elevate. You paid this guy $50 million, $230 million guaranteed in the bank right now in escrow. You got to make him work it, right? Like, he going to have to make up for a wide receiver or 2 here. Like, I know that it's common to be used for these quarterbacks. Oh, he didn't have great wide receiver help. But once you are paid $50 million per year, you got to help yourself at some points, right? Tom Brady helped himself. Aaron Rodgers helped himself. Once you are that level of quarterback, we can't be sitting here talking about, oh, he needs help.
No, and again, we'll see. Deshaun Watson will be an upgrade. All right, Quincy, Kara, and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. We're going to take a look at some remaining free agents still out there and who the Browns might be interested in. Sports4CLE, be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine. We continue talking Browns on the first day of the 2022 NFL Draft. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. This one about the way the roster is constructed.
Hey, fellas, do you think we will have the right mix on the D-line to be able to hold off run-heavy teams like what's in our division with Pittsburgh, Baltimore? And let's face it, Joe Mixon for Cincinnati can rack up 100 yards by the end of the third quarter if we let him. Plus, we play New England again, a game that was pretty hard to watch as they ran all over us last year. That was, I think, our worst defensive performance of last year. That means nearly half our schedule we will be facing teams that will test our run defense early and often. Who are some premier run stoppers left in the draft or free agency that we need to consider? Hey, here's to wishing Andrew Berry an awesome draft. Thanks, guys. Bye.
As always, we appreciate all of the voicemails. And Quincy, that's got to be one of the concerns as you look at the way the roster is constructed right now. They got to find some support on the defensive line, if you will.
Yeah, they got to get some space fillers, right? Like, they need to get somebody who could take up some space and eat a double team. It was supposed to be Andrew Billings last year, but it just never worked out with him. And then now, we're looking at maybe a Travis Jones could fit into there. Maybe a Logan Hall could be somebody who could do that. Jadeveon Clowney coming back would be huge for that because of what he does in the run game. I think you could eventually get Perrion Winfrey to a point to where he's a good run defender, but I think that will take some time. I think ultimately it will pay off because he'll be the better player long term. There's really nobody out there that's going to be like a great run defender, so you kind of just have to hope that Taven Bryant's going to be a better run defender this year. He was a decent run defender in years past. Maybe he could be that again. But that's really where you're hoping at, right? That run defense is going to be there, that at least the pass rush, right? This is where you're just bet on pass rush too, where, hey, you just hope that the pass rush can get them behind the sticks enough that they can't run the ball as much as they want to, right? That's usually how this thing goes. But yeah, and the Browns don't have the 13th pick anymore. Jordan Davis is off the table, and that was the one dude come in and fix all that. But nobody else in this draft is going to be a catch-all solution for them.
All right, so let's take a look at some of the top free agents that are still available. This is from NFL.com. You mentioned Jadeveon Clowney. Also out there, Melvin Ingram. We'll run through a couple of them. You look at some of the interior guys. There's Akeem Hicks. Hughes, another report from Mary Kay Cabot that the Browns have had interest in Jerry Hughes. Trey Flowers, another guy. Some familiar names a little bit as you go further down that list. Larry Ogunjobi, Sheldon Richardson, both have played for the Browns in the past. And then we're going to throw in a couple of wide receivers, Will Fuller, and then Julio Jones. And you see the age there, and Julio was injured and not as productive for the Titans. So of those guys, who makes sense when we run down those? Start with the defense, and if you think either of those wide receivers, we'll get to them in a minute. But of those defenders, does anybody interest you there?
I would think Akeem Hicks makes some sense there. Also, I would say Jerry Hughes would make some sense. And that's really about it. I feel like, Larry Ogunjobi would be somebody who makes sense if they can't get anybody at like 44, 78 that they like there at D tackle. just because we know Larry can get to the quarterback at the very least. It's going to take time for him to get on the field. And we know what Larry can do. We know he has chemistry there. Sheldon Richardson is a little bit old at this point, so I don't see that one kind of being the thing that they do. And he was not very good last year at all or disciplined, so that was an issue for Minnesota. Remember Cleveland in the game that they had versus Minnesota, Sheldon Richardson helped by getting like a couple of unnecessary roughness penalties against the Browns. So, it's not a great pool. You know, it's the older veteran players looking for 1 year. And that's really all that you can do at this point of free agency, right?
Yeah, and that's kind of what the Browns are. That's what you need. You need somebody that can come in and do a job for you. You're not going to get a superstar by any stretch. I think Clowney probably is the one guy who could make a pretty significant impact.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Clowney's somebody who could come in, make an impact. You know, I kind of don't even want to consider him a free agent. I just hope he's still on this team because I think their defensive line would be in trouble if they don't have Clowney, right? Because he's such a big part in what I felt like made that defense hit that next level. So again, Clowney would be integral part of this team to re-sign. I hope they get that done as soon as possible.
All right, Quincy Carrier and I can step aside, take one more time out. Other side of the break, we turn our attention to some Baker Mayfield talk. Sports4CLE. Be right back. Stay with us.
When it comes to selling you a mattress, most retailers are handing you a long line of extra steps that drive up costs and create confusion. At the Original Mattress Factory, we simplify the mattress shopping experience by building mattresses and box springs in our own local factories and selling them direct to you. It's short, sweet, and simply makes sense. So experience more than just the mattress store. Experience an original, the Original Mattress Factory.
We continue talking Browns. Let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. This one about Baker Mayfield.
Hi, I got a question about the Cleveland fans, and why does everybody treat Baker Mayfield as if he's LeBron James, like he brought us a championship or something? Everybody wants to be sympathetic and poor Baker Mayfield, but he didn't win us much. I want to know what you think about that. Thank you.
All right. Always appreciate the voicemails. Quincy, what do you think? Baker's a guy that has a lot of supporters. Why do you think that is?
Some of it is because he was really good at Oklahoma, right? And a lot of these guys are coming from Oklahoma. Another part of it is because I don't know, because I'm not empathetic. Well, not empathetic. I'm not of the same mindset of these people. There are people who really thought that the Browns were trying to win those 2 years. Well, I'm not trying to say that they were tanking, but there are people who really thought that the Browns were that bad, just because they were trying, right, to be good, but they were that bad. And they were devastated those 2 years. They went 1-15, 0-16. Now, me personally, when I was watching those seasons, I kind of knew what was going on. No, they weren't tanking, but also they weren't putting the best rosters together. We kind of knew what was going into that, expecting it. And they feel like Baker pulled the Browns out of it, or maybe they bought the propaganda that Baker pulled the Browns out of this. But I have pointed this out several times. The Browns have added 8 Pro Bowlers to the roster since 2018. None of those guys are Baker Mayfield. So, yes, did Baker have a part in it? I think so. But also, I think people give him way too much credit. And this just is how things go with the quarterback. Everybody wants to give the quarterback all the credit. He was the one guy that was there for the last 4 years, so it was on him. But it's kind of interesting how people are pumping up the highs with Baker Mayfield, which is the 1-11-5 season where he was really good. But, they want us to not say anything about what the majority was of the Baker Mayfield era, which was, up and down in a lot of bad performances, a lot of interceptions. That just can't be pushed down about it. And we get to a point to where you can't say anything negative or positive without it being polarized in this way. And it's just a tiring discourse completely when it comes to Baker Mayfield.
Yeah, so here are 5 first-round bold predictions from CBSSports.com. And this one is that Baker Mayfield trade team terms are finalized. And it's by the end of Thursday night, teams should be able to decide on their quarterbacks once they see how the board lays out. You see the Panthers, Seahawks, Lions, Texans are all mentioned there. Do you think they finally have an idea of where Baker Mayfield is going at the end of the night?
No, I think we're going to wait this out. Probably a couple more weeks. And then the Browns will either figure out what they want to do with him or just do it, right? You can't Ben Simmons this thing. And what I mean by that is you can't just have Baker there logging him around, having people answer questions about Baker Mayfield, having people have to talk about this whole Baker Mayfield thing, having him do stuff behind the scenes is going to have people ask you questions. You have enough of questions to be asked about quarterbacks and everything else with this team already because you traded for Deshaun Watson, which is going to be an upgrade, but it comes at a cost. But you can't add other stuff on here, add more stress, allow people to, in the locker room to jump with one side or the other, right? You just got to cut that thing loose. So, I know people don't like the ideal of selling low, but people sell low for a reason, right? It happens because sometimes you just got to cut bait and it don't make sense to hold on to it no more. In the positives of getting a little bit of something, just to hold on to this headache, it just ain't worth it. You just got to let it go at some point, right? You just got to take your loss and move on. So either they're going to trade him within the next few weeks or they'll probably release him. I highly doubt we get to mandatory camps and we're talking about Baker Mayfield as a Cleveland Brown because that's the point of no return, right? Once he doesn't show up to mandatory camps, you talk about fines, you talk about questions, you talk about media headlines, and you just want to avoid that. It's not worth it. They should not let it get past that point if I'm the Cleveland Browns. And I think teams know that, so it probably will end up being a release.
All right. When you look at this is interesting. Johnny Manziel giving Baker Mayfield some advice. Here we go with Johnny Manziel.
For the most part nowadays, I try and stay out of a lot of the Cleveland drama and what surrounds the Browns. But being a friend of Baker and having a bunch of mutual friends, we do spend a little bit of time together here and there. He's got a good head on his shoulders. I think he's got a lot of his career left ahead of him, and he's going to get himself in a situation just based off the fact that Cleveland doesn't want him anymore. Obviously, with the decisions that they've made, he's going to land on his feet, and I think he'll end up somewhere where he can be successful. I wish him nothing but the best.
So how's that? An endorsement from Johnny Manziel. That's going to make Baker feel really good, huh?
What's interesting? I forgot something about Johnny Manziel, but he's much better at that than Baker Mayfield was, right? Now, everything else, Baker Mayfield is much better. Like as a football player, he's much better than Johnny Manziel. I'm not even going to invite that whole conversation, right? But when it comes to the media stuff and just answering and just saying the right things and all that, like in the media thing, people will be surprised by this, but anybody who lived through the Johnny era remembers he was actually good at that stuff, right? Like this is kind of salacious, but if Johnny Manziel was in the situation that Baker Mayfield was in, we know that Johnny would have acted immaturely behind the scenes because of everything that we know about him at that time and that age. But I don't think he would have all the weird stuff come out about him around this time, right? About the letter and the passive aggressive podcast and all that stuff. Like that's not how Johnny got down when he was in the NFL. He would do stuff and get caught at a concert after he was supposed to be at rehab or something like that. But that wasn't him like trying to make a statement, right? Like Johnny was really good at that media stuff and those media obligations when he was here. And that's just another example of that. Johnny answered that question right. I mean, how else are you supposed to answer a question about Baker Mayfield when you are not associated with the Browns? Hey, man, wish him the best. Hope he does well. Got a great head on his shoulder. And then move on for the question. Baker Mayfield, he don't answer questions like that. And that's why Baker Mayfield's in the situation that he's in. It's one of those things that like it sounds bad, but like if you know what I'm talking about, you understand I'm being fair here. He could stand to learn that from Johnny Manziel to be better in those situations because Johnny was really good. Johnny got away with going to rehab on a football team, dog. Like, and people were just like, hey, he's better now because he was good at the media stuff. Like, the level of stuff he got away with was because he was good at that. The level, Baker has not done anything on that level, but he could not get away with it. Why? Because he is terrible at this stuff. And that ultimately could be the difference on if a team wants to give you a chance or not. Like, and unfortunately, that's what it's coming down to for him.
All right, before I let you go, let's listen to this. ESPN Get Up Crew on Baker Mayfield and what kind of option he is for teams right now.
Are you trying to tell me that Baker's not a better option than at least what they currently have waiting for them tonight?
Well, no, El, I think you're right. Like Baker Mayfield in 2022 is a better option if you have to play a quarterback than any of these guys that are coming out in this year's draft. I don't think there's any question about that. The difference is exactly what Dan, has been outlining, which is none of these quarterbacks in this year's draft are going to sign a one-year, $19 million deal. I mean, so that's really what it comes down to. It's about the compensation and the fact that you would have him for 1 year. And so, I think I believe he's getting released, or again, what Dan outlined, which would be, all right, the Browns pay some of it and, his salary, and then the acquiring team, doesn't absorb the full $19 million roughly that Baker's owed this year.
Baker takes his motto, he's always got to prove that all the doubters are out there. He's going to shut them up. Is he still a starter in the NFL in your mind, good enough to be one?
He is. I think he's one of the best 32, so I think he's definitely a starter. My question would be, when you talk about, what does he have to prove that you can win because of him? I think that's the knock on him at Cleveland, right? As you put this good football team around, I know he played injured last season, but are you going to win games because Baker Mayfield is your starter?
And Quincy, that last statement is the question that I kind of had. You can win with them. I don't know if you can win because of them.
I think actually the question is a little bit different for me, because I do think he can win you a game. I've seen him win a game, right? Against Cincinnati, he's done that. The question isn't, can he win you a game? The question with Baker Mayfield is, can he win you more games than he's going to lose you, right? Because that's what we've seen with Baker Mayfield. Sometimes he plays great and we win a game because of him. Sometimes we lose strictly because of Baker Mayfield, right? It is all on him at certain points, right? When you throw three interceptions in one half of football, I don't know how else to characterize that, but you cost him the game, and then you throw an interception at the end of the game that was very inexcusable, right? That's the Baker Mayfield ride. People I think sometimes we misdiagnose this as it being similar to the Andy Dalton thing, which is Andy Dalton's going to play at this level all the time, and sometimes it's good enough, sometimes it's not, dependent on what you got around him. Baker Mayfield go up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, and sometimes that's worse because you don't know what to expect with a dude like that. You can't build around a dude like that. You can't surround, because he can sabotage anything, but also you can have him. He played pretty well in 2018 around some wide receivers that ain't even in the NFL anymore, right? He can play at that level, elevate people, and you're like, oh my goodness, he's really good. And then you could have him have a whole Pro Bowl offense around him, and then he just tears it down and destructs it because he's playing so awfully, right? That's the life that you live with Baker Mayfield. It's more akin to a Jay Cutler than it is, or Jay Cutler and what's his name, Ryan Fitzpatrick, than it is Andy Dalton, right? I don't have the question of can you win with Baker Mayfield, or can Baker Mayfield win you a game? I know he can. I have the question of, does he win more games than he's going to lose you out the course of the year? And that's the issue, right? That's where Baker Mayfield drives us crazy. When we lose games that we could have won, but we didn't because he turned the ball over too many times. That's where he drives you crazy.
Quincy Carrier, as always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much.
No problem.
Quincy Carrier, make sure you check out his show on YouTube as well. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. We will continue talking a little bit about Baker Mayfield and the Browns draft. We'll be joined by Casey Kinnamon from Dawg Pound Daily, Sports4CLE. Be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
I am powerful beyond my wildest imagination.
I will define my future.
I will keep challenging myself to improve.
Because I am a future leader of this great nation.
I will be responsible for raising a beautiful family
and educating not only my generation, but many more to come.
I will make a difference in my community.
And I will stand up for what I believe in. I will not settle for simply chasing my dreams. I will achieve them.
Because I was given a chance.
An opportunity.
a home.
At Family, Career, and Community Leaders of America.
The ultimate leadership experience.
FCCLA has been one of the greatest experiences of my life.
It's made me who I am today.
Join us. We'll build a new future together.
We continue talking Browns on Sports4CLE. Time to head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. This one about a draft day trade.
Final 2022 draft question for the Browns from a longtime Browns fan, now retired in beautiful Wyoming. Mayfield. I think probably the best thing for the Browns to do is trade Baker Mayfield to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in exchange for a 2023 second-round pick. Tampa Bay would pick up $8.5 million of his salary. Cleveland would be stuck with $10.4 million, of which they can then split the dead money between 2022 and 2023 at $5.2 million apiece. I think it's a good deal for both sides because Baker can learn underneath Brady, who will be gone out of Tampa Bay next year. Gives Tampa Bay some flexibility. Thanks.
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. Let's welcome in Casey Kinnamon. Casey, I think if the Browns could do that trade, they do that yesterday.
Yeah, you pull the trigger on that as soon as that exposes itself. Yeah, it'd be a great situation. I'm sure Baker wants to be a starter in this league, and he is no doubt one of the 32 best quarterbacks on the planet. But if you're going to go somewhere and be a backup and potentially be groomed for a starting role, there's no better place you could go than, back up the GOAT in Tampa. And from the Browns' perspective, they don't have a first-round pick in the next 3 drafts, so if they could recoup a second in 2023, that'd be a huge get for the front office.
Yeah, and eating that much of the salary is definitely, tenable, and you can spread it over 2 years. So it's a thought. I just don't know if you'd be able to get that high of a pick. Let's take a look. Bleacher Report, 2022 draft day trades that make sense for every NFL team. They have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers trading for Baker Mayfield, like the caller suggested. When we look at the Browns, they have the Browns trading all the way up into the first round. You see some of the rationale there. And getting Treylon Burks. Again, I get the whole Bucks and Baker. I don't think the Browns have the ammunition to get up into the first round. In the report there documents Burks is one of the guys that they've had in for a visit. The poor 40 time is what's making him fall. I don't think the Browns have any way of getting into the first round. I really don't. I just don't see it.
No, any scenario you're going to lay out for me that ends up with Treylon Burks being in Cleveland, I'll take it. But I'm with you. They don't have the ammo. What's it going to take to get into a first-round selection again? It's going to take a future first. The Browns simply don't have one. Is someone willing to wait for a 2025 first-round pick? And that's also something Andrew Berry would never do. So, yeah, I don't see that scenario falling out. But if you can work some witchcraft or something or some voodoo and get Treylon Burks in Cleveland, yes.
All right, let me ask you this. Who do you think – let's do it this way. If you were going to tell me if Andrew Berry walks away with these 2 or 3 guys, boy, did they do a number? Did they do what they did last year when they got Greg Newsome and JOK? Who are the 2 or 3 guys with the Browns picks in that second and third round that if they come away with, you're like, yeah, they got it again?
I'm seeing a lot of people talk themselves out of Pickens right now. I mean, it's all over the place. It's smoke screen season, so believe little of what you hear. I've seen a lot of character concerns. For me, I put all that to rest with the kid tore his ACL in the spring, and he could have folded up everything and just trained for the combine, but he chose to get back to play for his team. So he might be immature. I'll listen to those arguments, but he's about the team. That's what I want. So if they walk away with George Pickens and Logan Hall out of Houston, I'll be ecstatic.
Yeah, and the other thing is with a kid like Pickens, put him next to Amari Cooper. We've already heard what Amari Cooper is, consummate pro, and I'm sure that would probably go through Andrew Berry's mind. Pickens, you're gonna come here. Your locker's gonna be next to Amari Cooper's. Learn from him.
Yeah, and his dad is Carl Pickens. Like, that's NFL bloodlines. And Carl Pickens was a havoc on the sidelines to deal with. That man was tremendous down the field. It just, he's going to have people in his corner that can help him through these immaturity issues, if they're even true at all. Who knows? Smokescreen season.
All right, Casey Kinnamon and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out on the other side of the break. We're going to look at some of the best and some of the worst draft picks that the Browns have had over the past 5 years. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students, kindergarten through 12th grade, can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine. We continue talking Browns with Casey Kinnamon from Dawg Pound Daily. So, Casey, I know you wrote an article, 5 best draft picks the last 5 years, an article. So we'll go through them. Greg Newsome, JOK, first and second rounders last year. Baker Mayfield, number 1 overall pick in 2018. Ward, the number 4 pick in 18. Nick Chubb, second round pick in 18. Myles Garrett, number 1 overall pick in 17. When you look at those, last year, earlier in the show we did the redraft, and both JOK and Greg Newsome went before the Browns picked at 26 in the redraft.
Yeah, home runs. I mean, there's no other way to look at it. And they've layered themselves up for future success because you already have your foundation on the defense now, your cornerstones with Denzel and Myles. But you've also got future cornerstones in JOK and Greg Newsome that'll come down the line 3 and 4 years from now. So they just have set themselves up for a tremendous future on that side of the ball.
You mentioned Baker Mayfield, and when you look at that draft, obviously Josh Allen would have been, the undisputed number 1 overall pick. But Baker ended up being better than Sam Darnold, than Josh Rosen, so he's in that middle range there.
He basically just gave stability. You drafted someone who started 59 games for you. He's a 500 quarterback, but he's thrown for 14,000 yards and 92 touchdowns, 60% completion percentage. Like I said earlier, he's one of the 32 best quarterbacks on the planet. Now, is he in that top tier? No. But, that's not what this organization was. Could you imagine if I had to do this exact same list from the 5 years before that, from 2011 through 2016? It would have been just brutal. This was people don't want to admit it, but it was what they needed at that time to get to where we are right now.
All right, now the 5 worst of the last 5. We have Howard Wilson was a cornerback, a 4th round pick. Kaiser, the quarterback, a 2nd round pick. Seibert, the kicker, in the 5th round. Antonio Callaway, 4th round pick, and then Chad Thomas, 3rd round pick in 2018. When you look at that, take us through what made Wilson, and just spotlight 1 or 2 of those as well.
Well, Wilson, you have a player like the Browns traded 2 5th round picks to go up and get him, and then you do that. He never even suits up for you, not once. There were players on the board. There were safeties like Chuck Clark and Xavier Woods. You could have had George Kittle. Instead you traded up for a guy who never even put a uniform on. So that's pretty brutal. Kaiser, I kind of felt bad about even putting on the list. I feel like that young man was set up for failure from day one. His supporting cast was like Isaiah Crowell, Duke Johnson, Ricardo Lewis, Corey Coleman, and tight end Randall Telfer. That's going to be tough for any quarterback to succeed, but he did start 15 games and he lost all 15, There were tons of talented players on the board then, So it's hard to swallow taking him there. You could have had Cooper Kupp or Alvin Kamara or, there's just tons of talent. Kareem Hunt was still on the board. Then you look down like Callaway. That's like a tragic thing. That kid was really talented, but he just could never pull it together. All the red flags were there. The organization wasn't at a point where they could bring someone on like him. So it's tragic, but he hasn't called on anywhere else, so he never really did figure it out. But the Chad Thomas one, man, that hurts. That was an Alonzo Highsmith pick all the way. You go get a guy who looks the part, never has production in college worthy of where he was taken. And there were like really good players on the board right behind him. I mean, Justin Reed, BJ Hill, who we wanted. You know, you could have had Fred Warner. Offensively, you could have had Mark Andrews or Michael Gallup. You know, it was just a huge swing and a miss for an organization who's trying to put someone next to Miles to this day. They're still looking for that young guy to pair up with Miles, and that was the first swing and miss at it.
Casey Kinnamon from Dawg Pound Daily. As always, great stuff, Casey. Appreciate it very much.
Anytime.
All right, each week in conjunction with the Ohio Lottery Partners in Education Program, we recognize a role model student from somewhere in the state of Ohio. This week we head to Brecksville High School. Chelsea Mack, first team All-State on the softball field and getting it done in the classroom, a solid B-plus student. Chelsea Mack from Brecksville High School, this week's Shining Star. Leadoff hitters set the tone for an entire team. Brecksville's Chelsea Mack leads a Bees offense that keeps constant pressure on opponents. Last year, Mack had 78 stolen bases, second most in OHSAA history, a record her older sister Alexis holds. But Chelsea's focus has changed with an ever-evolving game in this, her senior season.
To beat my sister's record, just because it's kind of been like a sibling rivalry and I kind of just want to show her up. But last year, I came really close. I kind of choked, which was bad. But this year, my original goal coming into the season was to beat the stolen base record, but now as I've started showing my swing away more, that's not as much as my goal. Now as much as my goal is just to literally get on base. If that means I get to steal, that's great, but if I don't, then that's fine too.
The Macks are coaches' daughters, both played for their father Rex at Brecksville, and it shows in a number of ways. Chelsea was first team All-Ohio a season ago as a junior and just keeps working hard and expanding her game. She can do pretty much whatever is needed at the plate.
I actually decide mid-pitch sometimes. Like, I get on first base and I tell my Coach Best, who's usually there, I'm like, I literally did that mid-pitch. But it's literally based off where if I see like the third baseman like coming in, or based off the pitcher if they have a lot of speed, or anything like that. I would say I have a lot of confidence just because I have different tools to use, and I don't know, I have a lot of different options, so it's easier.
She's gotten outside of her comfort zone this year in that I don't want to share too much strategically, but she does bunt, slap, and hit in almost every game. She's alternated between those just depending on, and done a good job of manipulating the defense. So I think for a long time she just relied on her bunt and slap, and now the fact that she's swinging away, she's got a lot more extra base hits than she has historically, and hit a home run the other day.
When Chelsea needs some advice or a sounding board, she has a trusted resource just a phone call away. Her older sister Alexis, who played collegiately at South Carolina, Oregon, and Alabama.
She's someone I really trust. Her opinion after a rough game, or even after like any practice, I call her. I'm like, what do you think I should do? She's like my biggest inspiration, which is like cringe, but she helps me so much, and I don't think I'd be where I am without her.
They're two different kids, so the oldest one was really intense all the time, and this one is really kind of a joy. Like, she's pretty laid back, and in fact, she'll calm me down, because I mean, truly, I'll be hard on her, and she'll be like, Coach. She'll go, Coach Mack, Coach Dad, Coach Mack. It's gonna be okay. It's softball. It's gonna be all right. So, it's been a lot of fun, actually.
Next year, Chelsea Mack will take her considerable talents to the Southeastern Conference as well. Mack has accepted a scholarship to continue her softball and education at the University of Kentucky.
My sister played at Oregon and at Alabama against them in both super regionals. So I kind of always was following that team. It was my dream school from like 8th grade, and then it kind of went away once my sister obviously went to those other schools. But what I really like about Kentucky is the culture, Coach Lawson, how I can show my short game there, which is like bunting, slapping, and I can show my speed there. Versus other schools won't really let me like steal and stuff, but definitely the culture.
Mack carries a solid B-plus average in the classroom and plans to pursue a career in the medical field.
I applied for exploratory health studies, but if I could do anything, I would do health management, which is like managing hospitals itself, which is going to be a lot, but figure it out.
That seems to be one of Chelsea Mack's strengths. She can figure most things out as she goes. If you know a student who deserves recognition, we want to hear about them, and you can nominate them completely online. Go to OhioLottery.com. Find the About section. Click on Partners in Education. There you will see links to nomination forms. Nominate that student as an academic all-star, and they could end up being featured as our next shining star. Congratulations to Chelsea Mack. That's going to do it for this edition of Sports4CLE. We'll see you back here tomorrow. Scheduled guest Tim Bielik from the Plain Dealer and cleveland.com and Casey Kinnamon from Dawg Pound Daily tomorrow at 4 o'clock as we get ready for the second round of the NFL Draft. We'll see you then. Have a great day, everybody.